The kitchen aboard the Stellar Harmony smelled like rosemary and garlic. Danny Wright hummed while he worked, his hands moving quickly as he prepared vegetables for the evening meal. The knife made soft tapping sounds against the cutting board. Steam rose from several pots on the stove. Everything was going according to plan. Danny had been working as the head chef on this alien research vessel for 3 months now. It still felt strange sometimes, cooking for beings from different planets. But food was food, and hungry people were hungry people, no matter how many arms or eyes they had. He had learned to adjust recipes for different digestive systems. Some species could not eat salt. Others needed extra minerals that humans never thought about. It kept things interesting. The Stellar Harmony was a massive ship nearly 2 miles long. It belonged to the Galactic Federation, an alliance of 70 different species who worked together to explore space and study cultures. The ship had laboratories, living quarters, meeting rooms, and even a diplomatic hall for important discussions. Right now, it carried representatives from 12 different species. They were traveling to a neutral station to discuss trade agreements and peace treaties. Danny glanced at the schedule on his datapad. Tonight's banquet was crucial. The Vexari ambassador would be there, along with officials from the Kelton military and the Trell Hive Collective. Everyone needed to be happy with the food. Everyone needed to leave with full stomachs and good feelings. That was Danny's job. The Vexari were particularly difficult to please. They were a species of tall, slender beings with pale green skin and sensory stalks that grew from their heads like thin branches. They only ate plants. They considered themselves the most civilized species in the galaxy. Their ambassador, Zelith, had made it very clear that she found humans disturbing. Danny had overheard her talking to another diplomat last week. She had said that humans were unpredictable, dangerous. They came from a death world, she said, a planet so hostile that it had created a species of omnivores with forward-facing eyes and persistence hunting instincts. Predator traits, she called them. Danny had just shrugged when he heard this. Earth was Earth. Sure, there were venomous spiders and angry bears and sharks in the ocean. But there were also puppies and butterflies and sunny days at the beach. People always focused on the scary parts. He checked the timer on the oven and stirred one of the sauces. The sauce needed to reduce for another 10 minutes. He used that time to start preparing the dessert. Several species on board could eat a sweet custard he had perfected. It used a milk substitute made from processed algae. Not exactly traditional, but it worked. The kitchen was his domain. It was one of the few places on the ship where he felt completely comfortable. Everything had its place. The knives hung in a neat row. The spices were organized alphabetically. The pots and pans gleamed under the bright lights. Order and routine made good food possible. Outside the kitchen, the rest of the ship buzzed with activity. Scientists conducted experiments in their labs. Engineers maintained the massive engines that pushed the ship through space faster than light. Security teams patrolled the corridors. And in the lower decks, in a section Danny had never visited, the containment facility housed some of the galaxy's most dangerous creatures. The containment facility was a source of endless discussion among the crew. Danny had heard stories about what they kept down there. Specimens from death worlds, predators that could tear through steel, poisonous plants that could kill with a touch. The xenobiology team studied these creatures to better understand how life adapted to extreme environments. The most dangerous specimen, according to rumor, was something called a thorncat. It came from a planet named Kralix Prime, a world of dense jungles and constant storms. The thorncat was supposedly an apex predator, fast, smart, deadly. The crew talked about it in hushed voices. They said it had scales like armor and quills that could pierce metal. They said it had killed 3 trained hunters before it was captured. Danny thought the precautions were a bit much. Armed guards, triple-locked doors, motion sensors, and electric barriers. But he was just the cook. What did he know about alien predators? He finished whisking the custard base and set it aside to chill. The timer for the sauce went off. He reduced the heat and checked the consistency. Perfect. Thick enough to coat the back of a spoon, but not so thick that it became gloppy. He tasted it with a clean spoon. The flavors balanced nicely, a little sweet, a little savory, with just enough acidity to keep it interesting. The comm system on the wall chirped. Danny wiped his hands on his apron and pressed the button. "Kitchen here. Chef Wright, this is Vrask from security." The voice was deep and rumbling. Vrask was a Kelton, a species that looked like someone had crossed a rhinoceros with a bodybuilder and given it 4 arms. Just confirming the banquet is still on schedule for 1900 hours. Everything's on track, Danny replied. I'll start plating at 1845. Understood. Security will sweep the dining hall at 1800. Ambassador Zeleth has requested extra personnel tonight. Danny rolled his eyes. Of course she had. No problem. I'll stay out of the way. The comm clicked off. Danny went back to his prep work. He had vegetables to blanch, proteins to sear, and about 50 other small tasks to complete in the next few hours. The life of a chef was controlled chaos. You had to stay 3 steps ahead at all times. He was pulling a tray of roasted root vegetables from the oven when the lights flickered. Danny paused, frowning. Power fluctuations were rare on a ship this advanced. The lights steadied after a moment. He shrugged and went back to work. Then the alarm started. It was not the gentle chime that signaled shift changes or meal times. This was a harsh blaring sound that made Danny's ears ring. Red lights began flashing in the corners of the ceiling. The comm system activated automatically, and a calm automated voice filled every room on the ship. Containment breach in Section 7 Delta. Apex predator loose. All personnel evacuate to designated safe zones immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Apex predator loose. The alarm continued its harsh blaring. Danny set down his spatula and turned off the burners on the stove. No point in burning dinner while the ship dealt with an emergency. He walked to the comm panel and pressed the button. This is the kitchen. What's the situation? Static crackled for a moment before Vrask's voice came through. The Kelton security chief sounded stressed. Chef Wright, you need to evacuate immediately. Head to Safe Zone 3. Use the main corridor and do not deviate from the path. What about the food? The banquet is in 2 hours. Forget the banquet. Vrask's voice rose. The Thorncat escaped containment. It is extremely dangerous. We are initiating full lockdown protocols. Move now. The comm clicked off before Danny could respond. He looked around his kitchen. The sauce was perfect. The vegetables were done. The proteins were marinating. Hours of work sat on these counters. But an escaped predator was apparently more important than dinner. He untied his apron and hung it on its hook. Then he grabbed a towel and wiped down his hands. The alarm kept blaring. The lights kept flashing red. Danny took a deep breath and headed for the door. The door slid open with a soft hiss. The corridor outside was empty. Emergency lighting cast everything in shades of crimson. Directional arrows appeared on the walls, glowing bright green, pointing toward the nearest safe zone. Danny started walking. He had gone maybe 20 feet when he heard a crash behind him. He turned and saw nothing. The corridor was still empty. But there was a soft scratching sound like claws on metal. It was coming from the ventilation shaft above his head. Danny looked up just as a panel in the ceiling shifted. He stood there watching as the panel moved slowly aside. Something was in the vent. Something that was not supposed to be there. He should run. That was the logical thing to do. But Danny had spent his whole life working in kitchens, and kitchens taught you one important lesson. Panic makes everything worse. A grease fire gets bigger if you panic. A cut finger bleeds more if you panic. You stay calm, assess the situation, and act accordingly. So Danny stood there and waited to see what came out of the vent. The Thorncat dropped into the corridor with barely a sound. It landed on all fours, graceful and quiet despite its size. The creature was bigger than Danny expected. About the size of a large dog, maybe 80 or 90 pounds. Its body was covered in midnight blue scales that gleamed under the emergency lights. Quills ran along its spine, each one sharp and slightly curved. Its eyes glowed with an amber light like embers in a fire. The Thorncat looked at Danny. Danny looked at the Thorncat. The creature's muscles tensed. Its shoulders lowered. The quills along its back rose slightly, a clear threat display. A low growl came from deep in its throat. This was a predator. This was something that killed for food and fought for territory. Every line of its body said danger. Danny had grown up in Montana. He had seen bears near his family's cabin. He had encountered a mountain lion once while hiking. You did not run from predators. Running triggered their chase instinct. You did not show fear. Fear made you prey. He stood his ground and met the Thorncat's glowing eyes. The creature tilted its head slightly, confused. Prey ran, that was what prey did. But this strange two-legged thing just stood there calm and still. The Thorncat took a step closer. Its claws clicked against the metal floor. The growl grew louder. Danny suddenly realized something important. The thorn cat had escaped from containment. It was probably scared, definitely stressed, and judging by the way it was sniffing the air, it was also hungry. All the aggression might just be fear and hunger combined. The creature crept closer. Danny could see its muscles coiling, preparing to pounce. He had maybe 3 seconds before it attacked. He turned and walked back toward his kitchen. The thorn cat froze, confused again. Prey did not turn its back. Prey did not walk away calmly. The creature's instincts warred with its curiosity. After a moment, it followed, stalking behind Danny like a shadow. Danny reached the kitchen door. It slid open. He walked inside and went straight to the counter where he had been working. The thorn cat slipped in behind him, low to the ground, wary but intrigued. The smells in here were strong. Meat, fat, spices. The creature's nostrils flared. Danny picked up a piece of cooked protein he had set aside for quality testing. It was a synthetic meat substitute, but it smelled and tasted similar to chicken. He turned and looked at the thorn cat. The creature was near the door, watching him with those glowing amber eyes. "You hungry?" Danny asked. His voice was calm, conversational. The thorn cat's ears flicked forward. It could not understand the words, but the tone was not threatening. The creature took a cautious step into the kitchen. Danny tossed the piece of meat. It landed about 5 feet from the thorn cat. The creature sniffed it, then devoured it in one quick motion. Its eyes never left Danny. "Good, right?" Danny said. He grabbed another piece. "You want more?" "Then sit." The thorn cat stared at him. Danny pointed at the floor. "Sit." For a long moment, nothing happened. The alarm continued blaring in the background. Somewhere in the ship, security teams were mobilizing. But here in the kitchen, time seemed to slow down. It was just a man and a predator, negotiating an unspoken agreement. The thorn cat's haunches lowered. It sat. Danny felt a grin spread across his face. He tossed another piece of meat. The creature caught it midair and swallowed it whole. Then it looked up at him expectantly, the way a dog looks at its owner during dinner time. "Yeah, you're just a big cat," Danny muttered. He walked closer, moving slowly, keeping his body language relaxed. The thorn cat watched him but did not growl. Danny crouched down a few feet away. "Scared the whole ship, didn't you?" "All because you were hungry and bored." The creature's quills lowered slightly. Its posture relaxed. Danny reached out with one hand palm down, letting the thorn cat sniff him. After a moment, the creature bumped its head against his hand. Danny started scratching behind its ears, right where the scales met the quills. The thorn cat's eyes half closed. A rumbling sound came from its chest. It was purring. That was when the kitchen door exploded inward. Vrask stood in the doorway, his 4 arms each holding a different weapon. Behind him, 6 more security officers aimed rifles into the room. Their faces showed shock and confusion. They had expected blood. They had expected carnage. They had expected a dead human and a rampaging predator. Instead, they found Danny Wright sitting cross-legged on the floor with the galaxy's most dangerous apex predator curled up beside him, purring loudly as he scratched its head. Vrask's translator struggled to process his words. "How? What?" "This is impossible." Vrask lowered one of his weapons slowly. His other 3 arms kept their guns trained on the thorn cat. The security team behind him looked just as confused as their leader. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The only sound was the thorn cat's deep rumbling purr. Danny continued scratching behind the creature's ears. "You can probably turn off the alarm now," he said calmly. "I think the emergency is over." "Over?" Vrask's voice cracked. His translator had trouble keeping up with his rapid speech. "That creature killed 3 trained hunters on Kralix Prime. It tore through reinforced steel to escape containment. It is classified as a Class 9 threat." "And you are petting it?" "Yeah, well, it's calmed down now." Danny gave the thorn cat one final scratch and stood up. The creature looked up at him, then yawned, showing rows of sharp teeth. "See? Just needed some food and attention." One of the security officers, a nervous-looking being with 6 eyes, spoke up. "Sir, should we tranquilize it?" "No," Danny said quickly. The thorn cat's ears flicked back at the tension in his voice. Danny softened his tone. "No tranquilizers. It's fine, look at it. Does that look like a rampaging monster to you?" Everyone looked at the thorn cat. The creature had rolled onto its side, stretching out on the kitchen floor. Its quills lay flat against its scales. Its tail swished lazily back and forth. It looked, if Danny was being honest, completely relaxed. Vrask slowly holstered 2 of his weapons. He kept the other 2 ready just in case. Chef Wright, you are either the bravest or the most foolish human I have ever encountered. Probably a bit of both, Danny admitted. He walked over to his prep station and started checking his sauces. The evening's banquet was still possible if he worked quickly. But honestly, this wasn't that big of a deal. Back on Earth, we domesticated wolves. We turned them into dogs. Some people keep snakes as pets. My neighbor had a parrot that could bite through a wooden spoon. This is not a parrot. Vrask's sensory stalks quivered with stress. This creature is designed to kill. So are cats, Danny said. He stirred one of the pots and added a pinch of salt. House cats are actually incredible hunters. They just happen to weigh 8 pounds instead of 80, but the instincts are the same. And if you know how to read those instincts, you can work with them instead of against them. The thorn cat lifted its head and looked at Danny. It stood up, stretched like a cat waking from a nap, and padded over to where he stood. The security team tensed. Vrask raised his weapons again, but the thorn cat simply sat down next to Danny and looked up at him expectantly. Danny glanced down. What, you want more food? He pulled another piece of meat from the prep station and held it up. Sit nice first. The thorn cat sat back on its haunches, perfectly still, attention focused entirely on the food. Good, Danny said. He tossed the meat. The thorn cat caught it and swallowed it in one smooth motion. Then it resumed its sitting position, waiting for more. Vrask lowered his weapon slowly. This should not be possible. Maybe your species just doesn't understand predators very well, Danny said. He was not trying to be insulting, just stating a fact. The Keltons are warriors, right? You fight when you need to, but you're not hunters. You don't have the same instincts. Vrask's forearms crossed over his massive chest. And humans do? We evolved hunting mammoth with pointed sticks, Danny replied. He checked the temperature on his oven. Still good. We chased animals until they collapsed from exhaustion. We figured out how to track prey across miles of wilderness. Yeah, we understand predators. Because we are predators. We just happen to be really social ones who learn to cooperate. The kitchen door opened again. Ambassador Zalith entered, flanked by 2 of her Vexari aides. Her sensory stalks were rigid with alarm. Her pale green skin had turned almost white. She looked at Danny, then at the thorn cat sitting calmly beside him, then back at Danny. What is the meaning of this? Her voice was sharp and high-pitched. That creature should be in containment or destroyed, not sitting in the kitchen like some sort of pet. Danny turned to face her fully. Ambassador, with respect, this creature is not a threat right now. It was scared and hungry. I gave it food. Problem solved. Problem solved. Zalith's stalks trembled. You cannot simply feed a deadly predator and expect it to become docile. That is not how nature works. Actually, that's exactly how nature works, Danny said. He kept his voice level and calm. Getting into an argument would not help anyone. Animals have needs. Food safety stimulation. Meet those needs and most animals calm down. Humans figured this out thousands of years ago. That's why we have pets. Pets! Zalith spat the word like it was poison. You keep predators in your homes? Millions of them, Danny confirmed. Dogs, cats, even reptiles. My sister has a snake that eats frozen mice. My friend keeps a tarantula in a glass tank. They're perfectly safe as long as you understand their behavior and respect their needs. Zalith looked at Vrask. This is exactly what I warned you about. Humans are unpredictable. Dangerous, they have no sense of proper fear. This one treats a Class 9 predator like it is harmless. It's not harmless, Danny corrected. I'm not stupid. I know this thing could kill me if it wanted to. But right now it doesn't want to. It's fed, it's calm, and it's not feeling threatened. As long as nobody does anything aggressive, it'll stay that way. As if to prove his point, the thorn cat lay down and rested its head on its front paws. Its eyes remained open, watching everyone in the room, but its body language was completely relaxed. Vrask holstered his remaining weapons. The chef may have a point, Ambassador. The creature is clearly not aggressive at this moment. At this moment, Zalith's voice rose. And what about the next moment? Or the moment after that? Danny sighed. He understood her concern. Really, he did. But fear-based decision-making usually led to bad outcomes. Ambassador, if you want, I can help get this guy back to containment. But if you go in with weapons and aggression, you'll trigger its defensive instincts. It'll fight. People might get hurt. But if you let me work with it, I can probably walk it back down there peacefully. Walk it? Zelith stared at him, as if it were a domesticated animal. Why not? Danny asked. It's following basic commands already. Sit, stay, come here. Those are things we teach dogs. And this thing is at least as smart as a dog. The thorn cat's tail swished once as if agreeing with him. Vrask exchanged looks with his security team. Finally he nodded. I am willing to try the humans method, but my team will follow at a safe distance with weapons ready. Fair enough, Danny said. He looked down at the thorn cat. Come on, Mittens. Let's get you home. The creature stood and followed him toward the door. Zelith watched in stunned silence as Danny Wright, a human cook with no training in xenobiology or predator management, led the galaxy's most feared apex predator out of the kitchen like he was taking a dog for a walk. Behind them, the banquet preparations sat unfinished on the counter, but somehow Danny thought this was going to be a much more interesting story to tell. The walk to the containment facility took 15 minutes. Danny led the way, moving at a casual pace. The thorn cat walked beside him, occasionally stopping to sniff at interesting corners or investigate shadows. Behind them, Vrask and his security team followed at what they considered a safe distance. Their weapons remained drawn but not aimed. Ambassador Zelith had returned to her quarters muttering about proper protocols and insane humans. Danny figured that was probably for the best. The last thing he needed was someone panicking and triggering the thorn cat's defensive instincts. They reached the containment facility's main entrance. The heavy doors had been forced open from the inside, their locking mechanism sparking and broken. Danny whistled low. Impressive. You really wanted out, didn't you, Mittens? The thorn cat looked up at him and made a soft chirping sound. Quillen, the ship's chief xenobiologist, waited near the entrance. He was a quellet, an amphibious species with smooth blue skin and large, expressive eyes. He held a data pad and was making rapid notes. When he saw Danny approaching with the thorn cat calmly walking beside him, his eyes grew even larger. Fascinating, Quillen breathed. Absolutely fascinating. The creature shows no signs of aggression. Its body language indicates comfort and trust. How did you achieve this? Danny shrugged. Fed it. Scratched behind its ears. Treated it like a living thing instead of a monster. But it is a monster, Quillen said, though his tone suggested he was reconsidering that assessment. Its homeworld has a gravity 0.3 times higher than standard. The atmosphere is toxic to most species. The fauna includes some of the most efficient killers in known space. So it's from a rough neighborhood, Danny said. That doesn't make it evil. Just adapted. They entered the containment facility. The corridors here were different from the rest of the ship. Everything was reinforced. The walls were thicker. The lights were dimmer. Holding cells lined both sides of the hallway, each one containing some specimen or another. Danny saw plants that glowed with bioluminescence, a creature that looked like a cross between an octopus and a porcupine, something that might have been a rock but was definitely breathing. The thorn cat's cell was at the end of the hall. The interior was sparse. A metal floor, a food dispenser that delivered nutrient pellets, a water source. Nothing else. No enrichment. No stimulation. Just a bare box to keep the creature contained. Danny looked at the cell and frowned. No wonder it broke out. This is basically solitary confinement, Quillen blinked. It is a containment cell. What else would it need? Something to do, Danny said. Look, I'm not an expert on alien biology, but this thing is clearly intelligent. It learns commands. It responds to social cues. Keeping it in an empty box is cruel, and cruelty makes animals unstable. The thorn cat sat down next to Danny and looked into its cell. It made a low, unhappy sound, see? Danny said. It doesn't want to go back in there. Vrask stepped forward. Chef Wright, we appreciate your assistance, but the creature must return to containment. We cannot allow it to roam the ship freely. I'm not saying let it roam free, Danny replied. I'm saying give it a better environment. Some things to climb on. Toys, maybe. Social interaction. Cats go crazy if they're bored and isolated. I'm guessing this thing is the same. Quillen made more notes on his datapad. The human may be correct. We designed these containment cells for security, not for the psychological well-being of the specimens. Perhaps we have been approaching this incorrectly. Danny knelt down next to the thorn cat. He scratched under its chin. The creature leaned into his touch and purred. I'll make you a deal, Mittens. You go back in your cell for now and I'll make sure they fix it up. More space. Better stuff. Maybe I'll even come visit and bring you treats. Sound good? The thorn cat looked at him with those glowing amber eyes. Then it stood, walked into its cell and lay down in the corner. It kept its eyes on Danny the whole time. Good boy, Danny said softly. He stood and stepped back. Vrask activated the door controls. The heavy barrier slid shut with a solid thunk. Magnetic locks engaged. The containment field hummed to life. The thorn cat watched through the transparent section of the door but made no move to escape. It simply lay there, calm and quiet. Danny turned to Quillen. I want a full report on its living conditions. If you're going to keep these creatures, you need to treat them right. Otherwise, you're just creating problems. Quillen nodded rapidly. I will begin immediately. Perhaps you could consult with me. Your insights into predator behavior are clearly more advanced than our standard protocols. I'm a cook, not an animal trainer, Danny said, but he saw the hope in Quillen's large eyes. But yeah, I can help. After I finished tonight's banquet, they left the containment facility. The alarm had finally been turned off. The emergency lights had returned to normal. The ship was resuming its regular operations, but Danny could feel the change in the air. Crew members stared at him as he walked past. Some looked impressed, others looked nervous, a few looked outright scared. By the time Danny returned to his kitchen, the story had already spread through the ship's communication network. Video footage from the security cameras showed him calmly petting the thorn cat. The clip had been shared across multiple channels. Within an hour, it had reached other ships in the fleet. Danny tried to ignore the attention and focus on his work. The banquet was in 90 minutes. He had lost valuable prep time, but his hands moved with practiced efficiency. These are vegetables. Sear proteins. Reduce sauces. Check temperatures. The rhythm of cooking was meditative. It helped him think. Vrask visited the kitchen 30 minutes later. The Kelton looked tired but relieved. The containment team has reviewed the footage. They want to thank you for preventing what could have been a catastrophic situation. Just doing what made sense, Danny said while he arranged food on plates. How's Mittens doing? Mittens. Vrask paused. Oh, you mean the thorn cat? It remains calm. Quillen has already begun redesigning its enclosure based on your suggestions. The security chief hesitated. I must ask, Chef Wright, were you afraid? Even a little? Danny considered the question while he drizzled sauce over a protein. Sure, I was scared. That thing could have killed me easily. But fear and panic are different. Fear keeps you alert. Panic gets you killed. I grew up around dangerous animals. Black bears, rattlesnakes, mountain lions. You learn to stay calm and read the situation. Your world made you this way, Vrask said quietly. Earth created a species that can face danger without losing control. Every world shapes its people, Danny replied. He moved on to the next plate. You Keltons are warriors because your world required strength and courage. The Vexari value intelligence because their world rewarded careful planning. Humans are adaptable because Earth throws everything at you. Weather, predators, diseases, natural disasters. You survive by learning to handle whatever comes. Vrask nodded slowly. The galaxy has much to learn about humans. The banquet that evening was a success. The food was perfect. The guests were satisfied. Ambassador Zaleth even offered Danny a grudging compliment on the meal, though she still kept her distance from him. But the real impact came later. News of the incident spread beyond the stellar harmony. Other ships heard the story. Space stations discussed it. The galactic news networks picked it up. Video footage of Danny petting the thorn cat played on screens across dozens of worlds. The reactions varied. The Keltons wanted to understand how humans could remain calm under pressure. The Trell, who relied on fear and intimidation, found humans unsettling. The Vexari issued formal statements about the need for proper protocols and the dangers of reckless behavior. But one thing became clear to the entire galaxy. Humans were not like other species. They came from a world so dangerous that what terrified others barely registered to them. They had domesticated predators, befriended killers, and turned deadly animals into companions. Danny Wright, a simple cook, had just demonstrated something the galaxy was beginning to understand. Humans were the most dangerous thing on their planet, not because they were the strongest or the fastest or the most poisonous. They were dangerous because they refused to be afraid. And that made them either the best allies or the worst enemies anyone could have. 3 weeks after the incident, life on the Stellar Harmony had found a new rhythm. Danny continued his work in the kitchen, preparing meals and managing the dietary needs of 12 different species. But now, several times a week, he made an extra trip down to the containment facility. The Thorncat's cell had been completely redesigned. Quillen and his team had added platforms at different heights for climbing. They installed scratching posts made from a material that could withstand the creature's claws. They even added a puzzle feeder that made the Thorncat work for its meals, keeping its mind engaged. The bear box had become an enriched environment. Danny visited with treats and spent time just sitting with the creature. Sometimes he talked while the Thorncat listened. Sometimes he just scratched behind its ears while it purred. The security team no longer followed him with weapons drawn. They had learned that Mittens, as everyone now called the Thorncat, was perfectly docile around the human cook. Other crew members started visiting the containment facility too. Quillen gave tours, explaining how environmental enrichment improved the behavior and health of the specimens. The Thorncat became something of a mascot, though visitors were required to maintain a safe distance. Only Danny was allowed inside the cell. The incident had changed more than just the containment protocols. It had changed how the crew viewed humans. Danny noticed it in small ways. The Kelton security officers asked him about Earth's predators. The Trell scientists wanted to understand human psychology. Even Ambassador Zaleth had softened her stance, though she still maintained that humans were unpredictable. One afternoon, Vrask found Danny in the kitchen. The Kelton had brought fresh questions, as he often did now. "Chef Wright, I have been thinking about what you said, about fear and panic being different things." Danny was making bread, his hands working the dough with steady, practiced movements. "Yeah, what about it?" "On my world, we train warriors to face danger," Vrask said. "We teach courage and strength, but we do not teach what you showed us, the ability to assess a threat calmly and respond appropriately. How does your species learn this?" "We don't really learn it," Danny said. He shaped the dough into a loaf and set it aside to rise. "We grow up with it. When you're a kid on Earth, you learn that nature doesn't care about your feelings. Bee stings hurt. Dogs bite if you bother them. The ocean has riptides. You learn to pay attention, read the signs, and respond correctly, not with fear, but with respect and awareness." Vrask's forearms crossed thoughtfully. "Respect? That is an interesting word choice." "It's the right word," Danny said. He started cleaning his workspace. "That Thorncat isn't evil. It's just an animal doing what animals do. You respect that. You work with it instead of against it. Same with bears, snakes, or sharks. They're not monsters. They're just trying to survive, same as us. But they can kill you." "So can a lot of things," Danny replied with a shrug. "Cars, electricity, bad seafood. Life is full of dangers. You can't live in fear of everything. You just have to be smart about it." Quillen visited the kitchen later that day with news. "Chef Wright, the Galactic Federation has made a formal request. They want to hire human consultants for their xenobiology programs. Specifically, they want humans to help with predator management and specimen care." Danny paused while chopping herbs. "Really? Your approach to the Thorncat has revolutionized our understanding of captive predator care," Quillen explained. His large eyes were bright with excitement. "Other facilities are reporting similar successes. A human wildlife handler on the station near Kelton Prime managed to calm an aggressive Kravix using techniques similar to yours. The results are remarkable." "I just treated it like a cat," Danny said. "Exactly." Quillen gestured enthusiastically. "That is what makes it remarkable. Humans have thousands of years of experience managing dangerous animals. The rest of the galaxy does not. We avoided predators. We built defenses against them. But humans lived alongside them and learned to understand them. That knowledge is invaluable." Danny returned to his chopping. "I'm happy to help when I can. But I'm a cook, Quillen, not a zookeeper." "You are whatever you choose to be," the xenobiologist replied. "But your insights have already changed lives. The specimens in our care are healthier and calmer. The staff feels safer, and other species are beginning to understand that humans are not reckless. You are simply experienced in ways we are not." After Quillen left, Danny finished his prep work and decided to visit Mittens before the dinner service began. He grabbed some leftover meat and headed down to containment. The Thorncat was lounging on one of the elevated platforms when Danny entered the observation area. As soon as it saw him, it jumped down and approached the transparent barrier. Its tail swished with excitement. "Hey, Mittens," Danny said. He pressed his hand against the barrier. The thorn cat pressed its head against the same spot from the other side, as close as it could get to physical contact. "You doing okay?" The creature chirped, the same friendly sound it always made when Danny visited. Danny requested entry to the cell. The system ran its security checks, then opened the door. He stepped inside. Mittens immediately rubbed against his legs, purring like a small engine. Danny laughed and scratched the creature's head. "You're getting spoiled, you know that?" He pulled out the meat and held it up. "Sit." Mittens sat immediately, attention focused on the treat. "Good boy." Danny fed him the meat piece by piece, rewarding good behavior. When the treats were gone, he sat down on the floor. Mittens curled up next to him, resting his head on Danny's lap. They sat like that for a while, human and apex predator, comfortable in each other's presence. Danny scratched behind Mittens' ears and thought about how strange his life had become. 3 months ago, he was just a chef looking for an interesting job. Now he was apparently a symbol of human adaptability and courage. "You caused quite a stir, buddy," Danny said quietly. Mittens purred in response. "Made the whole galaxy rethink how they see us. Not sure if that's good or bad yet." The door to the cell opened. Ambassador Zealith stood in the entrance, flanked by her usual aides. Danny looked up in surprise. The Vixari ambassador had avoided the containment facility since the incident. "Ambassador," Danny said. He did not stand up, not wanting to disturb Mittens. "This is unexpected." Zealith's sensory stalks quivered slightly. She was nervous, Danny realized. But she stepped into the cell anyway, her aides remaining outside. She looked at Danny, then at the thorn cat, then back at Danny. "I came to apologize," she said. Her voice was softer than usual. "I have spent 3 weeks reviewing data and observing results. Your methods work. My fear was based on ignorance, not evidence." Danny nodded. "I appreciate that, Ambassador." "My people pride ourselves on logic and reason," Zealith continued. "But we let fear override both when it came to humans. We saw your predator traits in your dangerous world, and we assumed you were reckless or violent. We did not consider that your experiences made you more capable, not less." Mittens raised his head and looked at Zealith. The ambassador tensed, but the thorn cat simply yawned and laid his head back down on Danny's lap. "Earth is a death world by your standards," Danny said. "But to us it's just home. We learned to live there. We figured out how to coexist with things that could kill us. That doesn't make us fearless. It makes us adaptable." Zealith took a cautious step closer. "May I ask you something, Chef Wright? When the thorn cat escaped and entered your kitchen, what did you feel?" "Scared," Danny admitted without hesitation. "That thing is dangerous, and I knew it. But I also knew that panicking would make everything worse. So I stayed calm and tried to understand what it needed. And it needed food and companionship. Turns out most living things do," Danny said with a slight smile. Zealith was quiet for a moment. Then she did something Danny had never seen a Vexari do. She lowered herself to sit on the floor, crossing her long legs beneath her. "Will you teach me?" she asked. "About your world? About how humans think?" Danny was surprised, but he gestured to the space beside him. "Sure, Ambassador. Though I warn you, I'm better at explaining food than philosophy." Over the next hour, Danny talked about Earth. He described the variety of environments, from frozen tundras to scorching deserts. He explained how humans had spread across every continent, adapting to local conditions. He talked about domestication, about how humans had turned wolves into dogs and wild cats into house pets. He spoke about respect for nature and understanding animal behavior. Zealith listened carefully, asking thoughtful questions. By the end, her sensory stalks had stopped quivering. She even reached out slowly and touched Mittens' tail. The thorn cat opened one eye, looked at her, and went back to sleep. "Thank you, Chef Wright," Zealith said as she stood to leave. "You have given me much to consider." After she left, Danny gave Mittens a final scratch. "Time for me to get back to work, buddy." The thorn cat made a disappointed sound but let him stand up. Danny exited the cell and headed back to his kitchen. He had a dinner service to prepare. As he walked through the corridors, he thought about the conversation with Zealith. The galaxy was beginning to understand humans better. That was good. But Danny hoped they understood the right things. Humans were not superior or invincible. They were just people who had learned to live on a difficult world.